Hey everyone, so with this video what I want to do is cover some functionality that I really like in Nintex Workflow Cloud. Lately I've been building some quite large workflows, some of them from 80, 90, 100 or more actions, and as those workflows run I need to store some information somewhere that I can also query within that workflow instance. So we're not talking about a system of record that we want to store in, like a database. Of course you can do that if you want to, or SharePoint. What I'm talking about is for a specific workflow instance, I need to store a bunch of data, and then I need to be able to query it and modify it, things like that, as I need to. Now, when the instance runs, it's gone, right? So it's literally just for the life of the workflow instance. So essentially, think about as a glorified workflow variable, but this is more complex. So what I'm going to do is actually going to use a couple of actions that we released a little while ago around query XML and update XML. I'm an old school developer, I love XML, so this makes it really easy for me to start putting together a data structure and then be able to query it throughout my workflow. So the first thing I do is I go into variables and I create a variable called text XML. If you've seen my videos or my blog posts from before, you know that I always like to preface my variable names with the type of the variable. So I always put in text XML or COLL and then the name if it's a collection. In this case, for the default value, I'm going to put in just some simple XML. So that's my default XML structure. And then you can use this update XML to add things into it. So the XML source is going to be that variable. The XPath is, I just want to insert it into essentially the root XML node, and I'm just going to add a child node. And in this case, I might add something like, let's just do name, or we'll do company, and I'll just put in Nintex. And then the result will go back into the text XML. So pretty straightforward. To make sure this works, I'm going to log that XML variable. Alright, so let's save this and we'll just do XML test 3. Once it's saved, you can do this workflow testing, which is really cool. It means I don't have to go publish it and do all that sort of stuff. I've got this as a component workflow, so it could be something that gets started by some other system. So let's submit this. This is now running, and in a moment you'll see some actions appear in here. There you go. It's done the update XML, it's logged the instance details, and there you see there's my XML, right? But notice if I was to run this workflow again, it would look exactly the same, right? So this does not persist after the instance of the workflow actually finishes. Okay, so now that we've got that, we've got a way of actually inserting nodes into our XML. Now let's have a look at how do you then query that. So let's use the query XML action. Again, we insert our XML variable. We're going to say I want to pull out the company. Now let me just double check, did I use capitals? Nope, lowercase company. I want to get back the inner text, and I'm going, because I only have one result, so I only put one company in there. Let's put that in there. We'll create a variable called text company. Of course, if you have multiple nodes, you can store it in a collection and iterate through that. So let's log that just to make sure that works. Again, you can save it. We can do the workflow testing. And once you do the workflow testing for the second time for the same workflow design, make sure you click on Start New Test. So the first time you do it, it automatically runs it. After that, it allows you to see the previous run. So in order to start a new one, you have to click on this button here, which is Start New Test. Again, we'll give it a moment. It'll process that, and you can see there's our XML, and there's the name that it pulled out from that node. So as you can see, you can start putting a whole bunch of stuff together as the workflow instance runs. So if your workflow is based on doing a bunch of processing, querying a particular system, getting a bunch of data, doing some calculations, and you want to store that, and you want to store associated data together as the workflow runs, and then near the end of the workflow you have another section that actually grabs all that data and parses through it and maybe outputs a report, maybe uses the generate document action to actually output a PDF, for example. This is a really cool way of actually getting all that data, putting it into some XML, querying it, getting collections, and then dumping it out into a table, into a PDF file. So hopefully this helps a little bit. Next version of the video will be around talking about some other things you can put into the XML, some more complex stuff you can do with it, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, definitely reach out.